our next speaker for today, actually we're going to, yes, we'll start with our next speaker, Seri, okay. Our next speaker is Seri Edber, and she's a bereaved mother who's found incredible meaning in offering compassionate bereavement care to others after the full-term stillbirth of her son Jacob in 2006. She's been the lead coordinator and facilitator for the Los Angeles chapter of the Miss Foundation since 2008. Her volunteer work includes facilitating monthly support group meetings, organizing multiple remembrance events, and coordinating a biannual kindness walk. Additionally, she's one of 3 stillborn mothers who successfully sponsored and lobbied for the elective issuance of a certificate of stillbirth in California. And she'll talk more about that later. Yes, thank you. Seri is the mother of 2 subsequent living children, an 8-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son. And Seri, if you would come, please.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for that welcome. I'm incredibly grateful to be here. I wear several hats here. As Lita introduced me, I'm a bereaved mom and the facilitator of the Los Angeles Miss Foundation. I'm also trained to be a certified bereavement care provider through the Miss Foundation and the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Family Trust. Those were the 2 hats that I came here knowing that I was going to be wearing those hats. But after our presenters yesterday on maternal mental health, I realized that I'm coming at this with several other hats as well. I'm also a NICU mom. Our 5-year-old son was born at 27 weeks, emergency C-section, weighing 1 pound, 15 ounces. And he was in the NICU for 3.5 months. And so I wear that hat as well. In addition to my volunteer work, I'm also a parent and me facilitator, where I teach a baby class, 2 toddler classes, and a 2-year-old transition class. And we do a lot of parent education with attunement, parent and child bonding, and we're also looking for all of those maternal mental health connections to make sure everybody is connecting with their children in positive ways. So I'm seeing this from multiple perspectives. Before I get into the mindfulness-based bereavement care, I want to kind of introduce that topic because it's a big word, that word mindfulness. And it's kind of a hot topic right now. You hear about mindfulness in yoga and mindfulness in meditation and mindfulness in education, mindfulness practices for children. And it almost seems like this trend. And what I want to get across in this presentation is that it's a trend that's not going out of style. There's a reason why there's this phrase, practicing and learning mindfulness. It's because our society has moved so far away from mindfulness that we've just become so disconnected, so involved with our schedules and our busy lives and our to-do lists and our phone calls to make. And we're so in that mindset of what do I have to do rather than where am I and who am I connecting with? And we've become uncomfortable with sadness, and we've become avoidance of difficult topics, and we want to fix what seems broken. And all of those have made us a mindless society. And the goal is really to get back to that mindful mindset so that we can be present with others. Thank you, that would be helpful. It's a way of connecting to our own humanity. And that's really where we're going. Thank you. Okay, so I can't get into where I am now without going back to who I used to be. This is me and my husband on the day we found out that we were pregnant with our first son, during my pregnancy and at my baby shower. We were blissful, we were happy, we were excited, we couldn't wait to be parents. We had a perfect pregnancy that was completely full of innocence that we had no idea was going to be robbed from us. At my last doctor's appointment, I was 36 weeks pregnant. My doctor noticed that the baby's abdomen was a little bit smaller than the rest of his body, but told us that everything was perfectly normal and that he was right on track, and that babies sometimes have growth variances at the end of pregnancy. And we went home thinking that, yay, we're going to have a baby soon. 3 days later, I felt decreased movement. And there is this societal pressure to not be that paranoid woman, to not call our doctors every time you have a little concern or what you think is a little concern. So I turned to, we heard yesterday, Dr. Google, who does not have a doctorate degree. We searched it, decreased movement, 3rd trimester pregnancy. Totally normal. There's less room for the baby. Don't worry about it. There's probably just beginning labor and adjusting to these new surroundings. And so we didn't do anything. We didn't call our doctor. We didn't go in. We decided not to be those paranoid pregnant people. There is also this public fear of death where our providers, you didn't know this was coming, did you? They're bringing out Kleenexes for those who are by webcast. There is this public fear of death, and it's our doctors and our providers, our literature, our 6-week birth class that never once mentioned kit counting, decreased movement, what to do if there's decreased movement, or the possibility of stillbirth. I had heard the phrase stillbirth before. I was one of the first of our friends to get pregnant, and so it was a very new world for us. But I'd heard the word stillbirth, but it sounded so archaic. That surely can't happen anymore. And it was that innocence that we had in this great, perfect pregnancy where we just didn't even realize it was a possibility. By the time the next morning came, and when I realized that something really was wrong, by the time I got to my doctor, I hear the echoes of these words frequently. I'm sorry, but there is no heartbeat. Your baby died. 10 years ago, people didn't talk about this. We looked for support groups. We didn't find any until months and months later when somebody put us in touch with a few other mothers who had been through this. But by not educating pregnant parents about these possibilities, what you're really doing is instilling fear when the inevitable does happen to them, because these do happen. We saw the statistics yesterday, 26,000 stillbirths annually in the US. That's a really big number for it to not be talked about. And so what I want to convey today is that there has to be a way to convey information in a sensitive way that doesn't induce paranoia, but empowers parents to be advocates for their own health. So this fear, we didn't know this was coming. We were knocked off our feet with devastation. It wasn't even a nightmare because we didn't even know it was a possibility. It was so out of the realm of what we thought we were going to the hospital for. And so all of a sudden, I was consumed with fear of my being responsible, fear of not understanding what had happened, fear of not knowing if there was a right way or a wrong way to feel or act, a fear of being judged by anything I said or asked or did, fear of not being able to express my thoughts, emotions, and questions. There was the fear of giving birth for the first time, knowing what the outcome was going to be. There was the fear of saying hello and goodbye all at once, and there was the fear all of a sudden of death and what it might look like in our child. This is where you guys come in. You guys are the providers. You guys are the first crisis responders. Parents need guidance. They need to know that all of these fears, all of these emotions, it's not just the sadness. It's not just the anger. It's not just those feelings that are kind of known. there is this brokenness. Your entire world has just come crashing down. And we need to know that we're not alone. So you guys have the first opportunity to set bereaved parents onto this trajectory of healing by helping them in these moments be present, helping them, guiding them, encouraging them, validating, acknowledging, showing empathy. I'll get into that. But even if patients aren't asking questions specifically, please know that they are feeling completely lost and afraid. And they need you. They really do. We suddenly, with this fear, turned into what if. There are two words that haunt every bereaved parent for a lifetime. What if? What if I would have gone to the doctor sooner? What if? What if I had trusted my instinct? What if there was more information about stillbirth? What if it wasn't such a taboo topic? What if doctors had actually told me at my last appointment, everything looks great. I am noticing that the abdomen is a little smaller. That could be a sign of trouble. It's a very, very small risk, but just be aware and make sure you're counting your kicks and call us if anything does change. There you go. Maybe we would have had a different outcome. Maybe. And that will always be with us. Jacob was born on July 20th, 2006. He's beautiful. In these moments, it was our nurses who encouraged us and guided us and told us step by step what was going to be coming throughout the labor and induction process, what we could be expecting in terms of what he might look like, that he might have an increased pigmentation in his lips. There might be some discolorations in his skin, but no matter what, he is your son and he will be beautiful. And in those words, they validated my motherhood. They validated his beauty. They validated my grief. They knew all of those things, and it was our nurse who allowed us to be present in those moments and to be validated in everything we were feeling so that we could cherish those memories later. Rana mentioned yesterday that it's making those memories that are so important that parents are going to treasure down the road. And in those moments, that was our gift. She enabled that gift because had we not had her guidance, had we not had her helping us make those memories, had we not had her place him in my arms and say, "Your son is so beautiful, I'm so sorry," we would have never known to ask. We didn't have a camera with us. Do you know what she did? She went to the gift shop and bought us a disposable one, and brought one to us. They weren't great quality. I'll talk about that a little bit later, because there is an organization who helped us later do some transformations in those pictures. But it's everything to us. My husband and I always say that if we ever have a fire in our house, we go for Jacob's pictures first. So these are our disposable camera pictures, some of them. There are a lot of juxtapositions that exist in a stillbirth, in a death of a baby. Beauty and pain can coexist. We knew in those moments that these were beautiful, beautiful memories that we were making. I think it was Kristen Jared yesterday who spoke and said that that was the most beautiful time in her life. This is what I referred to as the most whole time in my life. This is when our family was complete. This was the only time our family was complete, when we had, at that time, our only child in our arms. In these moments, the juxtapositions were more on a small scale. We had the love and awe that we felt holding our newborn son for the first time, and the devastation and grief knowing that we were never going to be able to bring him home. We were amazed figuring out who he looked like, looking at all of his little details, but also devastated that we would never see him grow into the person he was supposed to be. We were memorizing every feature of his face, while also feeling so afraid of bringing him any cold or discomfort that we couldn't even unwrap his body. This is the intersection of birth and death. It's the simultaneous hello and goodbye. And it's the guidance that allowed us to cherish all of those times. We left the hospital feeling so many complex emotions. I think right after a loss, it is impossible for bereaved parents to explain in words all of the feelings that they're having. You know, Dr. Cook explained some of the stages of grief, and it's complicated because Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was an amazing woman who actually meant for those stages of grief to be applied. She saw these patterns in patients that were given a terminal diagnosis, and it was their own grief about their own mortality and death. And that's where those stages came into play. They've been kind of shifted to be geared towards bereaved parents, and it doesn't really work because they're so cyclical. Grief is not linear, it's not predictable, it's not rational. It is a mess. And you can be feeling so many emotions all at once. You can feel an emotion, not have that emotion and come back to it. But these are just some of them. Broken, lonely, isolated, longing, guilt, aching, anguish, heartache, devastated, shock, raw, blame, sadness. These words are really scary to people who haven't experienced them. Who wants to sit with somebody who feels broken to their very, very core? But it's even more scary for the person feeling them, knowing that nobody wants to sit with them in those emotions. We get comments from others. You can have more. You're young. At least it wasn't a pregnancy. At least you didn't get to bring him home. It was early. Everything happens for a reason. He's in a better place now. How are you? They don't really want to know the answer. They really don't. So you get by saying, okay. Oh, good. Good. You look better. You're smiling again. Great. It's all a facade. We learn how to function. We learn how to survive. What we really want is someone to be with us in our grief. And that's when we found our lifeline. The Miss Foundation we attended first as grieving parents. Los Angeles didn't have a Miss Foundation support group. In LA, I found 6 other bereaved mothers online, and we connected. We started meeting once a week, and one of them was a little bit further down the road, knew about the Miss Foundation from her own grief, and she decided to become a facilitator. And we created the Los Angeles Miss Foundation. And when she moved back to Colorado with her family, that's when I decided to take over. It was about 1.5 years later. We'd already had our subsequent daughter, but we stayed in touch with these families. We kept going to support groups through our subsequent pregnancy. We heard from Lindsay yesterday about how hard a subsequent pregnancy is after a loss. The Miss Foundation was our lifeline. I consider these other bereaved parents to be my grieving soulmates. You can walk into a room of strangers and not know their last name. You don't know what they do for a profession. You don't know where they grew up, but you know the deepest part of their souls. It became a completely sacred space to us where we bear witness to each other's pain. And there's this quote from Dr. Joanne Cacciatore. She's the founder of the Miss Foundation. At times like this,
or at times when you feel most alone, come to this place and remember that here, the memory of your precious child is treasured. Here, you are upheld. Here, you are accepted without judgment. Here, we sadly walk with you. And that's what we do. There are all of these juxtapositions on a bigger scale. You had these beauty and pain that coexist in the moments when you're with your children, but you also have this joy and sadness that you learn to integrate into life. And that comes with being validated, being acknowledged, and having somebody say that you are not alone. And that's what MISS did for us. The MISS Foundation was founded by Dr. Joanne Cacciatore in 1996, 2 years after the stillbirth of her own daughter. It grew to be bigger than she ever imagined. She started in Phoenix, Arizona, on a very, very small scale, and it has grown to not only provide support to bereaved parents, but to also provide legislation and advocacy and research. Their website and their forum boards get about 1 million families a month. There are 27 online support groups. There are 90, I don't know if a few more have been added, about 90 worldwide support groups now. It is a lifeline.